Welcome back to the Brogressive Podcast. I'm your host, Max Levin. I'm actually honored to be here today because I have a collaboration with the Electorate Podcast. We're actually here to welcome Ian from the Electorate Podcast to the show. It's truly an honor to be here. I think our mission statements of starting our shows are perfectly in line with each other. Ian, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's cool to see other podcasts kind of going after the same sort of thing that we're going after. So it's been great to come on.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate you coming out here and giving us your time.
Yeah.
I want to talk already just off rip. Obviously, both our shows started with messaging failures. Not to be Mr. I was doing my detective work, but looking through your show, I saw you also started November 24, just like we did. What prompted you to get started? What was the kick behind, hey, let's get this thing running?
Yeah, so it was kind of interesting. Around the time that Joe Biden dropped out and was replaced with Kamala Harris, there was definitely sort of an air of excitement and something new and something fresh coming in, because it kind of felt a little bit hopeless maybe with Joe Biden sort of floundering and that disastrous debate performance and all that. So I started floating the idea around with a couple of people about, hey, let's maybe put together a podcast that kind of covers this and covers the election and moves forward. I had a little bit of trouble getting people to commit to it. And, finally I was like, okay, well, maybe this just really isn't, exactly going to work out for me. It's kind of hard to have a podcast as a solo individual unless you already have a pretty significant following. And then I started watching, the election and the signs, the cracks started to appear to us where she wasn't going on she couldn't get on the Rogan podcast, and whoever's fault that was, it's some different discussion to have, but she was only doing the traditional media stuff. And then the stuff that she was doing outside of traditional media, I kind of felt like it wasn't, I don't know. It just didn't feel right. It didn't feel organic. It didn't feel correct. So I watched the election, and obviously it didn't go the way we sort of expected. And it was at that time I was like, okay, maybe I'll just start it by myself for no other reason than to sort of vent my own frustrations and get on and just talk and see if anybody will listen. And started off slow, picking up being a solo individual, just interacting with other people. Started to gain a little bit of steam, obviously still pretty small. Our views average around 100, 200, 300, something like that. Some episodes, blew up in some of my collaborations, but it's really just all about trying to find or trying to create that ecosystem where progressives can show, hey, we're not just a bunch of, means tested messaging and kind of, progressive nerds. Like, we're just people, right? We know the dinner table policies. We know the stuff that affects real voters. And I think there's really a space for that. And you guys are showing it too. And, my podcast, The Electorate's very, very focused on politics, but I love what you guys are doing with branching out into sports and other things to show, hey, we're not just here to talk about politics. Yeah, we're going to do it, but we have other interests as well, and bring those people in. And so, hey, because there was like a masculinity crisis almost, right? In this, and like Democrats can't speak to that electorate very well. So it's great that you guys are doing that, and we're hoping to do some more of the same here.
Well, I really appreciate that. It sounds like the electorate just shouted out progressive, if that's what I'm picking up here.
Yeah.
But good. I mean, I was going to say, obviously, it sounds like you kind of had the exact same sort of background we did. Not to have a full progressive lore episode. Maybe I'll make it into a comic, prequel or something for anyone who's interested. But our whole thing started kind of as a joke, actually. I always like to tell the story because I think it's just really funny. I want to say it was after the debate or maybe after the election, we just lost, and I was outside walking my dog, and I had my headphones on, I'm just sitting listening to music. I'm just like, man, we just got I'm part of my French, we just got fucked. I was looking at the red states and wow, that's bad. Yeah. But I texted my buddy, the other co-host, Belay, and a group chat with us, and I was like, guys, I know what the world needs right now. 4 white guys need to start a podcast.
That's literally the same kind of moment I have. Is like, it was a fucking disaster, right? And then
what's unbelievable, it was like I fell for that just gaslight of, all the money we're coming in and all the enthusiasm, it's great, we're gonna win, we're gonna smoke them. And it's all of a sudden you're watching the numbers come in. It's Virginia's 5-6 points to the right, and you're like, I'm sorry, what? Wait a minute, what? New Mexico is New Jersey. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what the hell's happening here?
Yeah.
But
and it was interesting because during the election season, like I was knocking doors, like we were doing calls, I was phone banking in the area. So I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, very blue city. And like even out doing that, the progressive, what you would consider like the progressive base was very excited, like that Kamala Harris was the candidate and not Joe Biden. Your average person was drastically less excited about that. So like the low propensity voters that you go after who had maybe voted Democrat in the past and then came over and maybe missed an election here and there, didn't vote in 2022 or something like that. They just weren't all that pumped. I got a lot of, we plan to vote. It'll probably be for Kamala Harris or something like that. And a buddy of mine who is on another podcast that I'm a part of, Jackass Politics, he is Wake City Town Commissioner. And he's very involved, obviously, within the party. And he was saying that, no, on the ground, everything looks great. People are excited. I've never seen this much excitement. And I was trying to talk myself into it as I was going. I was trying to drink the Kool-Aid a little bit, but it sort of became evident to me. And then, like you said, I saw the Florida results come in and I was like, I knew we were going to lose Florida. Like that's not a huge deal, but it was a disaster in Florida.
Bloodbath,
Yeah. I mean, just complete disaster.
Yeah.
And like you said, Virginia, you saw the shift, you saw the big shift to the right, even though Virginia went blue. I mean, we hemorrhaged points there. In North Carolina, driving around all the precincts on election day, the turnout just wasn't there. And I was like, this is looking real bad. So like right around the time that the Pennsylvania numbers weren't, they were trending up and there was a lot left, but they weren't shifting. There was I was like, I'm going to bed. This is going to be bad. This is going to be real bad. And I woke up the next day and I was like, yeah, that was it.
I had the same feeling. I remember, I was waiting all morning, like sitting there thinking like, okay, today's the day. Like it's feeling good. Obviously enthusiasm, seeing all the videos of just people out the door.
Yeah.
And it's a really good point that I actually want to circle back to. You touched on. It's like the average person, right? I've been talking to my buddy Belay, right, the other co-host. We were interns together in DC. We were there on Capitol Hill. We talked a lot about messaging because obviously we did our comms stuff as interns because of course they make us write all the tweets and shit like that.
Yep.
But it's that average person thing, right? Obviously for an aficionado or somebody who's really invested, like you're reading the New York Times, you're reading the Washington Post. Like if you're not like breaking for a Democrat after reading all these things, like I don't know what to tell you. But the average person, like I explained this to my girlfriend because she's obviously a political scientist, but she works in law. She's on a very different side of these things.
Yeah.
And she was like, oh, I just don't know how they would do this. And I'm like, well, think of it like this, right? If you're the average person, all you know is maybe you voted in 2020 when COVID was bad, but inflation got really bad. The president of the United States is like kind of like a corpse. Maybe not. Like nobody really knows.
Yep.
And then the other guy who you kind of probably don't like because he was racist or something got shot and then pumped his fist and it was really badass. Like, I mean, credit where credit is due. That was pretty fucking cool. I mean,
it worked.
It did. I mean, but all that to say, it's like they didn't feel these things, right? Like, they didn't care. They're like, oh, it's like it was like Joe Biden's sidekick. Like, it's like the way I'm trying to explain it to people is like, how are you going to get people excited if like you're like, hey, guess what? We're making like a new like superhero movie, right, or something, right? And then like instead of Batman shows up, it's like his like sidekick from a couple years ago, and you're like, why do I care? Like,
yeah,
yeah,
and it's 100% right. Like the average American voter consumes something like 5 to 10 minutes of news per week, right?
Yeah,
they're not us who's chronically online, always plugged in, knows exactly each candidate's policy from top to bottom. They know that their groceries were too expensive, housing is too expensive, vehicles are too expensive, like everything's too expensive. And, people tend to underestimate the power of nostalgia. And they remember, hey, Trump said mean things back last time he was president, but my taxes were a little bit lower and stuff was reasonably affordable. And you can kind of see that in his own numbers, how he came into office in 2017, deeply unpopular. He left office even more unpopular and remained unpopular until inflation skyrocketed. And then you can see his popularity figures start to go up and up. And of course, that was how do you sit there and explain to people this is a global phenomenon, right? Every incumbent party. Yeah, right. People, every incumbent party lost. It is. And it is. That's 100%. And we tried, right? Yeah. That's one of the bad things that Democrats did is they tried to make that argument and it just doesn't play. People do not care.
And it's hard to go. You can't just sit around being like, "Oh, Econ 101, like it's a global supply shock and pent up demand." Like, it just, I truly, I don't know what you do. And like again, I spent a lot of time. I'm a college student, right? Obviously,
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time around college students. All my grad students that I've again, and I say this with a lot of contempt, who I have to answer to because technically I'm still undergrad, right? I'm not a grad student. I don't get to talk to these people as if I have an authority. But
Right.
they're like, oh, Kamala Harris should have, promised like Medicare for all. Like you don't enthusiast the base by campaigning with Liz Cheney or whatever, or you don't win more votes by like going further to the right. And I kept trying to explain like, okay, we lost the argument on inflation and all these things. So the answer is we're not going to win more votes with this magic, like super progressive electorate that wants Medicare for all. We're not going to win on like cost, like on any of these things. We're going to win on cost of living. Like if Kamala comes out and says, hell yeah, I'm for cost of living. And that means more houses, more like cheap taxes or no tax on tips. Like if it's what people think, that works. That's fine.
Yeah.
But they don't seem to understand. It's like, we didn't lose because she was too far right, too far like, maybe the too far left part, but like if that's a perception thing. We lost because of the incumbent shit. And like she put up a good performance, like compared to incumbent parties. I'm gonna go out a limb here. So you're referencing that same FT like bar chart where it's like below with incumbent parties.
Yeah.
And
it was basically the only one that bucked the trend was Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico. Now she wasn't the incumbent, but same scenario in that she was the one, same party. She was just the one to take over. And when you and again, I was on I don't know if you guys follow them, organizer memes on Next. Yeah. So I did an episode with them, and it was Emma Mont made a really good point there, and that there were a lot of problems with the Harris campaign.
Of course, as there are with everyone.
Sure. And most of them were just exacerbated by the fact that the campaign was only 107 days long. You have 107 days to, a lot of people didn't know much about Kamala Harris at all. And the people that did know about her remember her in the 2019 Democratic primary, where she was very far left, very progressive at that time. So you had two problems there. Fix that, and then introduce yourself to the people who don't know who you are. And that's incredibly difficult. I don't care how much money you have. That's incredibly difficult to do in 107 days. When I talked about the average American consumes like 10 minutes of news a week, you have very limited opportunity to get through to them. And I agree with you. I think she ran a great campaign. I think she's a good candidate. Were there faults? Yeah. And, I listened, I'm sure you guys probably listened to it too, the Pod Save America episode with Jen O'Malley Dillon and David Plouffe. And I was a little frustrated listening to that, and kind of, they just didn't feel like they thought they did anything wrong or could have done anything better. And that's not true. If you lose, there's something you could have done, right? And whether it's small or big, or whether these massive changes, but we're in a position right now where it feels like everybody is sort of on that sort of same side, right? Where they realize that we've got to do something different, but now we're just sort of bickering over what that is, right?
It's like the direction of the party, right? Like direction of the future, and it's like I'm pretty. Please pardon me if I say this wrong, because I love this guy. I would bring him on in a second, but Lakshaya Jain, his account, and he says like it's a lowest point for parties after losing, because we're trying to figure out direction, figure out our voice again. And it's like we're at that point, so everyone's busy like dunking on Joe Biden, dunking on Kamala, dunking on the campaign. It's like, okay, in a couple of weeks after Musk continues to fuck with more federal agencies, and like if he fucks over Social Security, it's like, okay, well then we're gonna find our voice and be like, hey, we're the ones who just don't fuck things up. Like but it's hard because it's accumulating, and we have to like go everything over with like a fine-tooth comb of, this money was allocated wrong here, or this ad was bad. And it's like, listen, would I have loved to do everything differently? But hindsight is 20/20, and I feel like everybody has their take of like, I would have done this. And it's like, would you though? Yeah. Because these are, experienced professionals who have done this for 20 something years.
Yep.
And you're just someone on fucking X thinking you know better. And it's like, this is really fucking hard to take, hey, this like background figure who, let's be clear here, like was in the background because Biden like doesn't want her to be in the forefront, and she kind of, I don't say shit the bed, but the thing with like the border in the very beginning, he's like, all right, no, you got to come in the back. And she did her job right. Like she didn't overstep her boundaries. She didn't overtake Biden, as much as it would have been a very different story of like, 2022, he's like, nah, you know what? I'm not running for re-election. It's her 2 years to build a name, like, or even a primary that she probably wins what comes out. Like it's whole different things. Yeah. But like, to dunk on her as if like, oh, well, she did a bad job and like she deserves to be punished for it. It's like, I just think it's mean. I mean, honestly, I'm just going to go out there and say it's mean.
Yeah.
It's like, listen, 107 days to convince, 70 to 75 million people, maybe you should vote for it, maybe you shouldn't. Like, that's insane.
It's incredibly hard. And like you hit the nail on the head there. There's no point in going back and being like, well, they should have done this, or they should have done this, or they should have done this. Anybody can do that. That's not fair. If you want to take lessons from what happened and apply those to sort of how the particularly the media ecosystem, but the whole political campaign landscape, how it's changing, from social media, podcasts, like all this stuff, it's totally different. That's fine. Learn your lessons. And I think, in my opinion, everybody earned a little bit of that, brief period of bitching and whining and just like having those complaints and just being cathartic and just letting it out and then being done with it. But now, like, we just got a new DNC chair, couple DNC vice chairs, like the party is ready to move in a new direction. Now we need to see what that is, because we look at like what Chuck Schumer was doing the other day, launching into those very kind of cringeworthy chants about we will win and we won't rest, and Maxine Waters out there. And I'm just like, it is time for a new generation of leadership, a younger generation of leadership, because you guys have had your opportunity and we've just floundered at every moment.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, one of the last people we interviewed talked a lot about like the proceduralism and all these jumping through hoops of like communications. And again, having seen how they do these things where a fucking it was Rotimi Adeoye, and it's like, for a fucking tweet for our offices, for Democrats to go out, has to go through like 5 layers of approval, has to make sure we use the correct. It's like,
yeah,
at that point we've already fucking lost. Like, the whatever event or thing we're talking about, people have already moved on.
Yep.
Like,
yep.
And that was the thing that killed me on the Hill. It was like, okay, we have a tweet and we're talking about fucking like a holiday, right? It's fucking Labor Day. We don't have to use the word Main Street like 6 times. Like, it's like, just fucking post about Labor Day, done. That's it.
Yeah.
Nobody cares about this. It's going to get a couple thousand views. Nobody's going to care, and move on. Focus on the big picture shit.
That's what, a buddy of mine is, we're in a group chat together. We were talking about this, and we were talking about that being kind of the point of Kamala HQ, that account, when it came up. It was like, just be fast. And sure, they said some stuff wrong and some of it was cringeworthy a little bit, but it was quick. It was responsive. But you're right. You see all these tweets that have to go through several layers of approval to get out there. And then you see like, them calling emergency meetings, but we'll convene tomorrow at 4 p.m. Like, what's the point? At that point, it's just the damage is done. Like, you lost your chance to respond to it. So not only do we need to be, like, as a party, do we need to be stronger, we need to be, responsive, but we've got to be quick. There can't be this delay, this lag, and don't, you look at AOC and everybody talks about one of the better messengers in the party. She's very real. She says what she says, and she just gets up there and does it. And if it's raw or she makes a mistake or what, who cares? Look at Republicans. Do they ever apologize for anything that they said that was incorrect? No, of course not. They just say it and then move on. And, obviously, I don't think we should be the ones that lie or not correct. If the information that we gave out was wrong, not correct it, but just go. Don't be afraid. Just get it out there and be done.
Just own it. I mean, it's the speed is the name of the game. I don't know if you listened to the Ezra Klein show, but they had a great segment about war for attention. It's like, if we're too busy like fighting for approval of like, should we refer to them as Latinos or Latinx for this holiday? Like, at that point, the whole event is over. Yeah, we've lost. The event is over. By the time the tweet gets sent, people even start to consider it. It's like, it's doctored. It's weird. It's annoying. It's late. It's like, it doesn't even matter. Yeah. Like, at that point, I'm sure you've seen Senator Chris Coons, or was it Chris Murphy, who's been doing the live stream? Yeah, Murphy. Yeah. Who's been doing these like live streams and like record. It's like, as much as people are making fun of him for it, because of course they decide to. It's like, they're raw and authentic. Like, I think that's more of what we need.
It's perfect. That's what we want. That's what we need. And if you're the person that's kind of making fun of that or has a problem with it, to me, you're the person who wants that means tested message and that precise 100% message every time. And honestly, you're probably somebody that's going to vote Democratic anyway. So you're not really what we're going after.
Well, and those are people that are like those are the same people that are the ones that would rather spend their time making fun of Democrats and holding us to this like impossible standard than it's there's a word for it. Like, I always try to explain. It's like like a weird modified version of game theory where like they're going to vote Democratic anyway, but they're going to hold them to this standard that's impossible. And they're going to spend this whole time dunking on us when Republicans are like, by the way, I'm going to raise your taxes and destroy Social Security. And they don't say a word. And it's like, what are we supposed to do when you're too busy? We're arguing with these people. It's like, okay, either get on board or lose. Because it's like, and in my mind, I look at like the game theory, right? The 4 different personal theories. But they've already accepted that either we win and they get what they want roughly and they can bully us anyway, or they lose and they get to bully us anyway for not doing enough. And it's like, okay, listen, dipshit, there's 2 options. Either you vote for us and you help us and we'll give you a sandwich, or you go to the other guy and he's going to punch you in the balls. Like, just again, what do you think is going to happen? Like,
that's not your audience. That's not who you should be going after. Like, just do the things that you need to do to bring over the the middle class voters and the working class voters who maybe go back and forth a little bit. Tailor your messaging to them, and everything else will fall in line from there. Nobody hates Democrats like Democrats, right? Like, it's just the most left-wing part of our base is just like, it's in an arms race to point out every fucking thing wrong with the party that it's not even worth our time. It's so much better time spent doing other stuff, better messaging, talking to, like what I said, working class and middle class voters, and, these kitchen table policies that really speak to what they want. Do that. Don't means test. Don't come out and so this kind of conversation leads me to I saw a New York Times Ipsos poll, and in the crosstabs there was this section where it said what Americans said were the most important issues for each group, right? And the 3 groups were themselves, the respondent, what they thought of the Democratic Party's top issues, and what they thought of the Republican Party's top issues. And all the respondents' top 5 were the economy, healthcare, immigration, taxes, and crime. Okay, those were the top 5 for all the respondents. What they thought the top 5 were for Republican Party was immigration, the economy, taxes, guns, and abortion. Okay, decent amount of overlap there. Most importantly, the most important ones, the economy, immigration. And then the Democratic Party, abortion, LGBT policy, climate change, the state of democracy, and then healthcare, right? And, the fact that LGBT policy was number 2 on what respondents thought was most important to the Democratic Party is a problem. Okay. And I'm not saying at all, by any stretch of the imagination, that shouldn't be important to us. We should not be running on that at all. Those are, protecting LGBTQ rights should be the things that we just do when we get elected. But if you want to get elected, the economy was nowhere in there. Immigration was nowhere in there, what they thought the Democratic Party's top issues were. And to this day, even now, we still don't have a cohesive message on how to deal with immigration. We still don't really have a cohesive message on how to deal with the economy. Our healthcare messaging is getting better, but it has a long way to go. So if you're telling me that these are the issues, that's what we need to focus on. Focus on the economy. The Republicans are the party of the billionaires and giving tax cuts to the elite. And, they said they were going to lower your prices, and they're not doing a fucking thing about lowering your prices. There is a common sense way to approach immigration, and it's not doing mass ICE raids. It's not, doing the things that the Department of Homeland Security is doing right now, which is proven so far to be very ineffective and very inefficient. But you go back and look at like President Obama, his immigration policy viewed at the time as sort of being very liberal. It was very strict. I mean, he was very pro-legal immigration, but very, very anti-illegal immigration. And we were just afraid of saying that. I was watching the 2019 Democratic primary where everyone was asked the question, do you think that undocumented immigrants should be provided free health care by the United States government? Every single candidate, including Joe Biden, raised their hand. And to me, I'm like, that messaging does not work, right? That is not going to play for the electorate as a whole. The population is not going to go for that. So you look at that and you say, okay, tailor your messaging to what people want. Tailor your messaging to what is actually what the party should be about, what makes you the big tent party. Stop focusing on the fringe of the population. Just do those things when you get elected.
It's a great point. It's like that primary that just kills us, because it's that weird cultural moment 2019, 2020, where it's like it was just the race to be who's more progressive, and it's like that came back to bite us in the ass so fucking much. And it's embarrassing, because like you look back at it and you're like, I'm sorry, what the fuck were we thinking? Like I don't, it doesn't make sense. And truly, it's Matthew Iglesias had a really good piece about like the groups, right? Obviously, these big, powerful groups that influenced Democrats, versus the Obama years where they were pushing our messaging and helping us, versus 2019, they kept pushing and fighting against the party to push us further and further left. And it's like, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, because who wouldn't love if we could just magically have free healthcare and fix all these things? Like, that'd be awesome. That's great, whatever. But here's the thing. When you tell that to most of the country, they're going to be like, I'm sorry, wait, you're going to take my healthcare away and then do this weird government system, and like you guys can't even figure out how to build a road, so why would I trust you with like it's just fuck off, stick with the basics, because all that and I feel horrible because I keep saying like all this like woke shit as if it's like I'm a Republican, but it's like when you spend all this time on identity and all this stuff, actual members of these communities don't see that, right? They're not college educated sitting there in a classroom going, what is the Chicano or Chicanx like identity? They're going, okay, my fucking eggs are too expensive. Like normal people don't give a shit about all of that. That works in a college classroom when your professor is an activist from the 60s who has their PhD and spends all your time talking about it. But in reality, people are like, well, gas is like $5 and I have to drive 30 miles to work. That's not helpful. Talking about fucking free healthcare for legal immigrants or all this shit or whatever it is, doesn't matter. They don't fucking care. And it's all that thing of like you said, like crime, immigration, economy. It's like you look at all the groups that shifted to the right. When you think of actual members of these groups, not the ones that go to Harvard, not the ones that go to Yale, not the ones that have thousands and thousands of dollars to their name. We're talking about the ones that live in communities. Like I like to go to the one in San Francisco, right, of the Asian population there, had that huge increase of crime during COVID and a lot of the Asian hate crimes. And then when we're talking about decriminalizing crime, and it's like they're feeling this like rise in hate crimes, are we tone deaf? Like you say no, crime is not okay. We put your ass in jail if you do that. Like that's not cool. We're not going to stand for people getting attacked on the streets. Not going to fly. Like it's weird because this election is like a mask off moment where we're all kind of sitting here being like, wait a minute, this is weird. Why did we all like allow this to happen? It's like a weird group think. Like I don't. I got nothing.
I really, and you're right, like that 2019 was this nexus point, because like 2017 when Trump comes in, this was like kind of almost like where we are right now, right? Where we're like, how the hell did we let this happen? And at the time, of course, we thought it was a blip, right? We were just like, okay, we fucked up. We didn't take it seriously. Nobody thought Donald Trump had a chance, blah, blah, blah. But then he gets into office and was like, his extreme views, the only way to offset those extreme views would be to have extreme views of our own. And it just sort of spiraled. And part of the problem was when you have a primary with that many candidates in it, right? And Tulsi Gabbard was even running at the time. But I don't know how many at the peak, how many were in a debate, 8, 9, something like that, maybe even 10. I don't know. It was a lot. But how do you separate yourself from the rest of them and show that you're a candidate that they should vote for, right? You've got to have more extreme policies that get attention. And there was a lot of that going on. And, until Joe Biden came in, and then it was like, okay, well, he's got the brand, he's got the name recognition. Nobody else showed, that they were going to rise above the rest of them. And nobody showed that they were a candidate worth looking at. And he kind of, in my opinion, the whole time, I thought he was going to be a stopgap president, right? I thought he was there to beat Donald Trump and then hand it off to somebody else who, like you said, probably would have been Kamala Harris. She probably would have come out at the top of the primary, because if she had been the vice president who would have been allowed to be out in the forefront and be sort of a voice and a face, I think she would have come out on top. I think that also would have given her more time to show how middle of the road she truly was in her policies. There were some things that I don't necessarily agree with. I think no tax on tips is a good one. I'm not sure it necessarily gets at the root cause of the issue, that we should be paying all workers some sort of minimum wage and not just relying on American citizens to subsidize those jobs. But down payment assistance on houses. We can sit here and talk about how well that would actually work. Would it increase the cost of houses because there's more money flowing into the housing market? Who knows? But most of her policies were very common sense, straightforward, not ultra progressive policies, but she just didn't have enough time to do it. She was still viewed as that sort of 2019 moment. And then when she came on the scene, Fox News and OAN and all them and Newsmax could just play those moments from back then over and over. And, I was talking to a buddy of mine who runs, who works for PolitiFact, and here in North Carolina, they do fact checking on political commentary, and he works for WRAL as well, which is a local news station. But he made the comment to me that California Democrat nationally is almost viewed like a slur this point to a certain amount of our and no offense to you guys, but here we see it too. We're a very, I say, purple state. We have a blue governor, blue attorney general. We voted Republican for a while now, and that looks like it's not changing anytime soon. But that message plays so hard here. California Democrat. And I'm like, we've got to find a way to message against that, because her policies were not extreme. They were not crazy. They were level. Could they have been worded a little better? Could they have been messaged a little better? Yeah, sure, of course. But they were not crazy policies. And we just never got out of that moment, that 2019 moment. We just never seemed to really leave it. And like we said, it's a lot of things that happen that shouldn't have, but that's sort of how we, being all the way over here on the East Coast, viewed it.
And again, another one of those testaments, like, do we spend all our time fighting saying, no, I'm not a California Democrat? Or do we fix the fact that when you say California Democrat, people go, oh, because again, living in California, I get it. Like, our party is an embarrassment. Like, our Democratic establishment in California is an embarrassment. And before everyone jumps to go, oh, well, it's because you guys are, it's just hold the phone. There's a reason why, because it's a one-party state. Like, there is no scenario where a Republican wins. And when you don't have that competition, it's beef between Democrats, right? You have the more progressive one, the moderate one. It's like, that's, I guess, conducive, but we're not interested in making real big policy change. And there's so much more that goes deeper to the infrastructure, the governance, the way the state is built, down to our environmental regulations, whatever, right? And it is just a unmitigated shit show. And I don't see any point, like, in the future where it's going to get better. And truly, that's the only way we're going to get better in improving this reputation, is until we can fix blue states and make them a bastion of good governance, right? If New York City and California are places like everyone's going, shit, like, I really would love to live there, not, it's too damn expensive. Like, that's going to be the breaking point. I really think, I'm sure you saw Richie Torres is in a way is running for governor, and obviously he's on the board of that abundance agenda. It's like, I think that's a great idea. If he can win that, at this point, I'm all but certain Harris is going to take the California governor's mansion.
Most likely.
If she takes it, like, if she chooses to go and say, hey, this whole abundance stuff, this new era Democrat of 2026, like, that's good shit. And if you can really fix that, that's going to put us on the, like, long-term trajectory to fix that image, right? Yeah. Rather than having to fight the image, which is true, right? I can't come out and say, hey, I'm a California Democrat, and people go, and I'm not going to win an election that way. At this point, it's like a death sentence. If you're from California, you want to run for whatever, it's like, you have to accept that most of the fight is going to be, actually, I am not like the other ones. And it's like, that's losing. That's not going to win. So at this point, fix it. Do the substantive work. Make your trains run on time. Make the subways work. Again, New York City is a great example. Your subway is late. There's people everywhere. It's expensive. The dials, what are the things you have to jump on? If again, if your infrastructure sucks, people aren't going to use it. California, another good example. Like, we have public trains. They're late all the time. They don't even show up. It's like our buses barely show up. They're just, you're waiting for the goddamn bus and it's not there. You're waiting for the bus or the train and it's late. It's like, okay, well, that doesn't work. So then you have to drive and then you have to buy a car. Then everything's on the freeway. It's like, start fixing these things. Start fixing the cost of living. Don't just do a one-time payment of like, oh, here's a subsidy for your rent. It's like, that's not going to fix it. No. More rent control doesn't fix it. Like, actually sit down, do the nuts and bolts policy to make it work. And they're not interested in doing that. And until we fix that, people are going to just point to us and be like, they're losers. Like, and it's true. We shoot ourselves in the foot. And all that it plays into the whole economy thing, like of cost of living and winning normal voters. If we can't show like, hey, we're actually doing this substantive work, like, yes, the Biden administration could point to all this money they put out. They can point to all these things they did, which is awesome. It's all this money to be allocated that's putting us on long-term trajectory for success for a long time. CHIPS Act, infrastructure, bipartisan infrastructure, IRA, all of it. But if the money's not getting dispersed and it's sitting in court where 10 layers of approval are going to take it to get the money out, look at the broadband one, right? It's $42 billion for rural broadband,
and they have
allocated. Not a single house connected.
Nothing.
It's embarrassing. No. It's embarrassing. It's truly. It's like the IRA. You allocate all these money for climate change, and then you spend half the time arguing of whether or not it's a good idea to build a wind farm, build battery storage. It's like, look, if you care about climate, the answer is get rid of the permits and build the goddamn infrastructure. If you care about jobs, build the things because we're going to need people to do it. Again, it's a good thing, but the fact that we're too busy arguing over it and holding it up in court going, is this good for the land? Is it good for the people who might live here? It's a fucking wind farm. Build the goddamn thing because they're going to appreciate their electricity being a couple dollars instead. Like, and it's embarrassing.
You're right on the money. And, those like infrastructure and broadband and all this stuff is already stuff that's going to be long term. You might not reap the benefits of it right away as far as the party and how it's viewed. So why are you holding it up even more? Why are you delaying it even more? All these years are going to go by, and then finally 10 years down the road, oh, you remember who did that? Joe Biden. He's hasn't been in office for however long, and nobody cares anymore, right? But back to your point, California really should be a bastion of progressive policies and ideas. Like, if you had, the best leadership there from top to bottom, it should be the point. It should be the state that you can point to and say, okay, if we elect Democrats, it's probably going to be something like that. But right now, how it is, it's like if we elect Democrats, it's going to be something like that. And like I said, we run into that a lot in California. I come from a very conservative household. I grew up a conservative until I was in college, and then I became independent, and then later on sort of became more definitely far more progressive. But I'm able to have conversations with my father, who's very conservative, and we talk about California, and he views it the way that your typical Fox News watcher views it. And I'm like, I've been to California, and yeah, there's problems, but there's a lot of good shit there too. There's a lot of things that are done correctly. And North Carolina's no different. Charlotte is a great city, but there's a lot of shit that we've done wrong. We've got bad crime here. And there's bad crime all around the suburbs. We've got bad drug problems. I'm sure you've heard of, the Western North Carolina issues with the flooding that we've had and not getting funding out there and not getting these people help. And our party or our state is controlled. There's like super majority in our state's house, and it's controlled by Republicans. And then you've got a blue governor and a blue attorney general. And we've elected a blue governor now several times, but we're sort of in this state in particular, and we are a battleground state and getting even a little bit even closer now, but we're sort of in this moment where it's almost like North Carolina is going to become a bellwether state for how elections will go at the national level. We have Raleigh and Durham and Wake County up there. We've got Charlotte, and then we've got Asheville, and then some into Western North Carolina. But it kind of looks like a map of the United States, whereas it's such a massive landmass or swath of it is red, but the major metropolises and university towns are kind of holding it down as blue. And in this most recent election, we had a kind of a downturn in Democratic turnout in Charlotte, which should be the strongest city in the state. And part of that was our mayor and our city council are doing nothing about the homeless population, doing nothing about crime. The mayor only pops up, to make speeches on, MLK Day or Labor Day or July 4th. And basically, other than that, she's an absentee mayor. And we have probably one of the best young DNC, or not DNC, but state party chairs in the country in Anderson Clayton. She's phenomenal at what she does. Well, she's limited because there's still so much of that old guard in the state that just don't want to let it go. Like our local, in my district, NC 12, Alma Adams has now announced that she's running again in 2026. She's going to be 80 years old. I'm like, it's time. It's time. We got to move on, because if Charlotte can get excited about a candidate anywhere on the ballot, if they can get excited about a candidate, they can really turn it out. But we've got to get excited, and we've got to change things here. And like just all coming full circle around to say, my dad was viewing what Charlotte has become lately as kind of like California, in that we're very Democratic controlled here in the city. We should be doing things better, and we're not. It's improving a little bit, but we should be doing way better than we are.
Absolutely. And it's one of those things, like if we're just, some basic econ 101, cities are where the growth happens. Cities are where the jobs are. Cities are where, and as much as we like to but rural life and that stuff, but cities are where things happen, right? They're the epicenters of power. They're epicenters of money. And again, we'll flip it back to California. It's California is huge, right? We have San Francisco, we have Los Angeles, and we have San Diego. We have all these cities that are these weird quasi super suburbs. It's if we want to govern them well, it's okay, well, you shouldn't be walking down Los Angeles Avenue or down Sunset Boulevard and seeing people slumped over on fentanyl. You shouldn't have to worry about the fact you're paying $4,000 for a little shoebox. There's so many of these problems, and it's when you have Fox News in this media ecosystem that can just point at you guys and go, look at this, and you're like, what do I say? I can't deny it. Sure. You live in Los Angeles, there's a bad homeless problem. You know it, I know it. I think Noah Smith had a really good explanation of being in San Francisco with female friends, right? They don't feel safe walking down streets because homeless people are catcalling them and causing this just social disruption where it's okay, we can deal with this, right? And the answer is build the homeless shelters. The answer is crack down on it. Don't allow this public disorder. People don't like that. People don't like chaos. And can you blame them? I don't like chaos. I don't like social disorder. I don't want my girlfriend walking down the street getting catcalled by homeless people. Here's the thing. You can do the whole progressive shit of they're mentally ill, they need to be taken care of, we need to do this. It's okay, fine. We can do that. That's great. Put them in the place they need to do it. Yes. Actually get the permits to build the fucking thing and put them there. Don't get all wishy-washy with me and go, I'm actually, it's you need to give them a space to be on the street. Shut the fuck up. Shut the fuck up. Yeah. Put them in the place they need to be. Get them the help they need. It's like a forceful hand where it's you can't have your cake and eat it too, of deal with the problem, but don't deal with it in a way I don't like. Well, the answer is fix the fucking problem. And it's if you really want to do that, okay, become outcome oriented, get innovative. And Jennifer Polka, the woman who works at the Nicholson Center, she wrote Recoding America. She's wonderful about it because she talks about outcomes. If you really want to fix issues, stop worrying about the semantics of, is the language correct? Is the shit? Just fix the fucking issue. Yep. When people say housing is too expensive, the answer is build the goddamn homes. Yep. If you want cheaper houses, the answer is not actually we'll do all these things and all this crazy wonky shit. No. Scrap that bullshit, rezone it, build the fucking houses, because in a year or two, people are going to go, oh, damn, I can afford a house and it's brand new. Yep. And you can save the wonky policy, 10-step program of reducing lumber costs and subsidizing people to go into the trades and permit. We can save that for a backroom door.
If you want to do that, just do it.
Yeah.
Don't talk about it. Just do it.
Exactly. Save that for people like me in a closed room door doing the econ papers. But for the rate of America, I'm going to say, I'm making your housing cheaper. You want rent cheaper? Yes, ma'am. Yes, sir. We're going to fix it for you right away. That's our goal. You want cheaper gas, cheaper oil, cheaper utilities? Well, the answer is we're going to build a bunch of solar farms and nuclear and solar. We're going to put it everywhere, and we're going to bring those costs down. Yeah. It's really, it's that easy.
what do people understand? There's three words that people always understand when it comes to the market: supply and demand. You want to fix the housing, just frame it as supply and demand. Everyone understands it. It's an easy message to just hammer home to people: supply and demand. That will make your housing cheaper.
And you can even go further than that. Just say, you don't even got to worry about supply and demand. It's like, if people are listening, just say, we're going to bring rents down, just directionally. Just they understand that. We're going to save you money. We're going to build you, get you new jobs. You want better pay? Done. We can do that.
Yep.
And the hardest thing is that like fetish for proceduralism, right? And for the folks who don't know that, like, there's this weird thing into the Democratic Party where we spend hours slaving away, whether it's on the Hill, whether it's at local levels, it doesn't matter where. Yep. Democrats will spend 20-hour days busting their ass to do every paperwork, every legal memo, and call every person and do everything correct just to get like one little project across the board, whether it's like even just like a tweet, right? And the converse is you have Republicans who have no problem just like a bull in a china shop coming in and destroying things. So the answer is, are we going to just build things that we need and get things done? Or do we just let them come in and just bulldoze it? It's like, and it's embarrassing. It really is embarrassing, because I can't wait for the day where someone like a Jared Polis or Richie Torres, or heaven, I pray to God if Harris wins the governor's mansion, just says, fuck all this like reform shit. Like, I'm just going to fix it. We're going to fix the housing stuff in California. Make us a bastion of good governance. You know, could you imagine? And obviously it's North Carolina, North Carolinian, right? Is that what you guys call yourselves?
Yeah.
Perfect. All right. I'm getting my states. But could you imagine if San Francisco wasn't considered this expensive, crime-ridden shithole, right? Could you imagine what we could point to if we say, hey, here's San Francisco. It's the Bay Area tech hub. It has some of the best housing on the planet, the best infrastructure, the best like whatever, and it's a cheap, affordable place where anyone can get a job. Like, if you have skyscrapers with housing and apartments, you can have plumbers and working class people live there. But right now, if you're not a high-value like high-performing lawyer, if you're not in AI and tech, you can't afford to live there.
No.
And it's horrible governance, and it's embarrassing.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much and underdeveloped land out in California and just surrounding San Francisco. And you know, I was out in Long Beach, so I flew into LAX at the end of January, and you know, it was interesting. You kind of talked about the homeless population and the fentanyl issue there, and I got off the plane and went to catch the shuttle out to my rental car place. And on the bus walks this woman who's obviously, you know, been doing drugs, having a mental health crisis and all that. And she's just, you know, raising hell, cussing at everybody. It's like what you would see somebody film, and not my thing. Wasn't going to do that to her. I was just sitting in the back minding my own business. She starts asking for, you know, a phone that she can borrow to call somebody who stole all of her stuff or something like that. Well, she comes up and, you know, reaches for my phone and tries to take it out of my hand. And I, you know, controlled the situation, held it and all that, and everything was fine. We got there, but when we got off, there's a security officer on the Hertz. And I was like, hey, you know, there's a woman on there that's having some sort of mental health crisis. Like, I think she might be dangerous. She might, you know, do something. And he was basically like, there's nothing I can do. And I was like, okay, well, that's great. But it's just, that's the thing that people hear, you know, outside of California and in swing states and in battleground states. That's the thing they hear, and they go experience it and they see it. And that just is a lasting image and a lasting experience. And we can do better than that. Like you said, stop the procedural shit. We're such a procedural party. We're such a wait your turn policy. Stop with the procedure. Stop with the wait your turn. Elevate your best candidates and let your message fly, and just figure yourselves out on the go. I mean, that's the way it needs to be done. You know, get your messaging out there. And if it's bad or it doesn't play, people will tell you and you can adjust from there. But stop campaigning 6 months before an election and then stopping right when an election's done. Campaign year round. Let your messaging flow year round, so that if you do mess up, you've got time to fix it.
Well, absolutely. And it's like I said, and it's that same thing of, you know, Republicans are in this like weird new media that they've built. You know, you have X as their own feedback loop. You have Instagram, and it's like, they understand that they're posting Republican-leaning things, taxes, whatever, you name it. These concepts that are leaning conservative, of like taxes are too high, or like any number of policy objectives, are getting pushed to people 24/7.
Yep.
And like, you're not going to break that by a couple silly posts with like your candidate looking up and looking hopeful of like, a better to future, whatever, like or democratic values for all. It's like, you're going to win it by being truly, I don't even know how to say this nicely, but being a shit poster. Like, the real reason Trump won is because every fucking second of the day, you could go on in 2017, 2020, whatever it was, and even back in this new election, like, he was posting all the time. You could go anywhere and see, like, what was it, like, no thin person, I've never seen a thin person drink Diet Coke, and people are like, that's mean, but that's really funny. Like,
to his credit, and a lot of Democrats don't want to say it, he's sometimes funny. Sometimes he hits the nail on the head, and this shit is funny. And that, I tell people this all the time, specifically within the party, who are trying to come with all these complicated messaging plans and do all this. And I'm like, you know what people vote on, aside from us who are chronically online and just fucking love policy, you know what people vote on? If they fucking like the person.
Yeah.
So many people will vote on a candidate just because they liked them, thought they were funny, watched them appear on a podcast or a show or something, was like, dang, they look cool, or I laughed at something they said. It's that fucking simple. You've got to have the policy. Of course you do. No doubt about it. But at the same time, you've got to be likable. You've got to be a person, stop being a politician and just be a person.
I think a really good example of what you're like hitting on is the like Veep stakes with Tim Walz, right?
Yeah.
You had all these groups that thought, oh, people are going to love him, right? He's like the embodiment of a manly man. And like, they kind of had the right idea by putting him on like TikTok and Instagram for a bit of like, oh, here's him hunting and here's him with his dog. But instead of having it be a scripted video where you have like camera crews and everyone recording him the way you should, this doesn't have to be a fucking film production. Just give him the phone and be like, how does this thing work? Like, it's funny. People are going to like that because if it's real, it's even better. Like, I don't understand this weird fetish of like having him be this like ultimate manly man thinking it's going to work and win voters. It's like, if you're having staff draft, you remember the football tweet when he was playing with
run a pick six.
Yeah. Look, I'm not going to lie to you and pretend I'm a football guy and I watch it every single day. But that got more attention of this is just embarrassing than anything I had seen about him prior. Like, people, it's pandering. And I think the worst part of, you spend enough time in Democratic circles, most of the comms people are Ivy League or, highly educated. Yeah. They have a bachelor's, a master's, or whatever. And for the most part, especially in Democratic offices, they're like I don't even know how to say this, but it's just they're female, they're LGBT, and they don't have interests that share with the kind of constituents we're trying to reach. And the problem lies in the fact that we're trying to reach these constituents as outsiders, right? We're not punching in. And the answer is like, well, if you're a member of whatever or whoever, find somebody who knows football. Like, don't Google football terms. If you don't like football, also, if your member isn't interested in that, don't pretend. Yeah, it's like if your comms team is female and LGBT and you guys want to talk about this and your member's cool with that, talk about that. Find your niche, own your things. Be like,
people understand and can point out inauthenticity in a heartbeat. It does not work. Stop pandering. Like you said, be who you are.
Yeah.
That video that he had where he was working on his truck, fantastic video. It was really cool. Like, as somebody who also has an old truck, I loved it. It really played for me. It would have been better if, like you said, he just popped out his iPhone, hit record, set it in the engine bay, and then started working and just talked to the iPhone. Not, 5 cameras and, all this.
Angles and editing. No editing.
Yeah.
None of that. No script.
Light rating and all this stuff. Just go. And I do think to some degree they nerfed him a little bit, right? They didn't let him really be what he could be. And it was like right after that football tweet that he started to kind of get pushed off to the side, and I'm like, why did you even pick him? Why, if this is what you were going to do, why did you pick him? Because okay, maybe Tim Walz isn't the most manly guy in the world, but he relates to men. He coached football. Like he knows young kids and young guys. He's just like the really happy fucking dad or uncle that everybody knows and has. Like, it would have been perfect, but they just nerfed him and put him on the sideline.
It's 100%. It's like I thought, again, in my time on the Hill, I thought about the same thing with, President Biden. It's like, you think of Trump, right? He goes up and says a crazy thing we've been doing this for 10 years, right? I'm 21. I remember when Trump was elected, I was in 8th grade, and I remember the day after, and I'm like, he just says whatever, and it just, nothing sticks. So at this point, with someone like Joe Biden, right, who is known to say weird things and like this weird kind of like I don't even know how to call it, like cornball-esque way, like uncle from weird state that says strange things. Own it. If you have President Biden going like, how the hell does this thing work? Like playing with the phone and then giving him a speech and be like I'm President Joe Biden and something, just some weird shit. Own it, because he's kind of funny. He says weird things and you're like, and the idea that they had to have him scripted and have him be perfect and like try to edit out any faults in his stutter, honestly, in retrospect, and again, this is my opinion, I would have owned the stutter from the fucking beginning. Like, look, I went to speech therapy as a kid. I didn't have it that bad. I called it a stammer, but I realized that's not the right word. It was like a stutter. It was like you repeat the word. Sure. Own that shit. If I was President Joe Biden and my comms team says own it, be like, hell yeah, I still stutter as President of the United States, and God damn it, if I can do it, anyone can. Own that shit. Be cool about it. Like, people are going to respect that. You know, don't try to edit it out. Don't try to hide it. Don't put him away in a box. Like, what was it like 2016? He said like if he had his way with Trump, he would take him behind the bar and beat the shit out of him, something like that. Like have him say weird shit like that, because people are gonna be like, okay, that's real funny. Yeah.
It's like a lot of it ended up actually playing into like what ultimately became the Dark Brandon sort of meme, and it was because they didn't apologize for it. Like you said, don't apologize for who you are. Don't try to hide it. Don't be inauthentic. Just be who you are. People can see through that all the time. And the one thing about, Donald Trump, for all his faults and everything that he does wrong, the stupid shit that he says, the word salad, the what he calls the weave, whatever the fuck it is, he doesn't care. It is who he is. He's not going to apologize for it. He's not going to walk it back. He's going to tell you, he's going to say it, and he's going to be fine with it, and he's going to move on. And he probably forgot he even said it. So.
And then the media is gonna. It's Steve Bannon's flood the zone concept, right? If you just keep saying things, new things, if you get a bad media cycle, say something else crazy, and they're gonna forget about it.
Yep.
And it works. It clearly fucking works. So why are we hiding some like? And again, I'll go back to Joe Biden. Like, why are we hiding especially our best candidate, our president's like, if he's going to say weird things, just own it. Just be like, hell yeah, the president says weird things and he's cool about it. Like, you know those like Dark Brandon edits where it's like he'd say something and a reporter would be like, oh, were you the one who did the drone strike? And he would just sit there, turn to the camera, look and smile.
Yeah.
Do some fucking laser eye edits. Own that shit. That's cool. That's the kind of things. And again, you want to swing young male voters. We like cool things. I like cool things. Who doesn't like cool things?
Yeah.
Like, if you want to fucking have the White House posting a picture of Joe Biden riding a T-Rex with laser guns, like, look, is it corny? Hell yeah, but is that really kind of cool? Like, yeah, put some 3 days grace behind it. Like, I'm liking that post.
Yeah,
it's the same thing of like, I don't understand how we got put in these little loops, and I really, honestly, coming back to college after being on the Hill, I really believe, and this again, my theory is that all these feedback loops of like these comms staffers and these people that are going into comms are coming from more elite universities, right? Yeah. Where professors and PhD people are former activists, and they took wrong lessons away from protests of their youth, whether it was Vietnam or whatever. And they think that by causing social disruption and getting everyone to pay attention to them worked. But what they don't kind of think about is like Vietnam had a really complex set of factors that went into ending the war, and like this is not to discredit the activists that did all these things. Like that is a good example. They did good things. Like, but you have to remember, old folks, the people who vote that were the voter base, were anti-Vietnam way quicker than young people were. You know, and all this to say is like, when you push too hard on that social disruption, people get scared. People don't like disruption. I don't like disruption. No. I like when things are calm. No. So own it. Like, don't go fucking overboard thinking throwing a shit fit and teaching people that, hey, if you throw a piss fit, that the government's going to respond to you. It's like, well, how about calmly come in and talk to your elected officials? You can do that. We have phones for a reason. I was the one who's picking up the fucking phones. If you call in and say like, hi, my name is, I'm just getting my name, like Max Levin, and I have a problem with the members policy on, again, this is the one I had to hear thousands and thousands of times. It was Israel over and over and over. If you have a problem with it, it doesn't make a difference if you scream at me on the phone or you say it nice and calmly. I'm logging it and I'm keeping it in a file, and we're keeping the members aware. He knows these things. Our staff knows these things. But if you very calmly and politely call and articulate your policy of what you want changed, one, I'm going to have a much better day. Two, I'm going to be working a hell of a lot harder to push these things. And like, we'll be able to have a much better dialogue instead of just coming in the office, calling me complicit in genocide, throwing things and throwing a shit fit. Like, if you say very calmly, like, look, we want this, we want that, we'll tell you exactly what we're working on, right? You know, we can work with the administration, we can work on these things. But if you throw a shit fit, throw a temper tantrum, and go give me an all or nothing ultimatum, and if I don't immediately tell you the 4 words you want to hear of like ceasefire now or like whatever, like I can't help you. Yeah, you know, I want to help you. That's my job. We were civil servants. That's what we're supposed to do. Yep. And all that to say, these comm staffers are taking away the wrong lessons of like, those activists in the past that are teaching them, yeah, that's okay to do that. It's okay that you have to word police these things, and we have to cave to activists because they're always right. And it's like, at what point do we go, okay, listen, we're doing our best, sit down, shut up, help us out, or we're not, you're not going to help us. Like the climate activists are, again, a really good example of this, like with the permitting bill. I want to say it was Manchin and Barrasso, senator from Wyoming and senator from West Virginia. They had a really good permitting reform bill, right? And the math kind of worked out to something like this: streamlining permitting for energy. So it was going to be a 2% increase in carbon emissions for oil.
Yep.
That's not good, right? We obviously know we've got to start getting our carbon emissions down and working on it. Do you want to know the other percentage for solar, wind, natural gases even? I think it was 14% decrease in carbon emissions. Yeah. So if you add those together, you're still getting a net 12% reduction. Yep. And you're still going to get it through the Senate. Like that's the thing. Either it's this net 14% or nothing. Yep. And they'd much rather throw a shit fit saying you guys are destroying the planet than actually get that substantive change. And like, at what point do we say you guys are a bunch of spoiled children using mommy and daddy's trust fund to come and hang out at Capitol Hill and protest and yell at us? Knock that shit off or help us out. One or the other.
And it plays bad with both sides, right? Because Republicans will look at that and see these people throwing a shit fit, and it'll end up like on libs of TikTok or wherever, and it looks like, social disruption is the thing, and everybody hates social disruption. Your average median person hates fucking social disruption. They think protesting is fine as long as you're quiet and in your little corner, but if you're standing in the middle of the road or you're raiding, whatever you're doing, if you're making more of it than just standing there with your pickets, but even that has a negative connotation to it. And then at the same time, those activists are then blocking, like you said, a bill that could ultimately reap a lot of benefits because they're spoiled, petulant children who don't understand that. And you're like, you have done nobody any good anywhere and hurt both sides.
Exactly. And it's like, it's like those bad lessons taken away from, again, I'm going to keep going back to it because I have professors that were a part of these movements, but like they're taking the wrong lessons away of like, oh, if we just throw a shit fit, things will work out in our favor. It's like, no, the thing in Vietnam was complex and we did bad things and I get that, but it was a complex set of factors, not just the fact that you marched around, because you do that, you especially the disruption factors. Like we can talk all about protest factors and how to do these things, but being really fucking annoying, and especially to the wrong people, doesn't work. I don't understand, because I live on a college campus. I've had 3 different TA strikes in my years here. My first quarter of college, right? During COVID, there was a professor strike with TAs involved. Then my second year, there was a TA strike. And so that lasted for 2 months and there was all these disruptions. They were cutting all these things. And like, again, I'll give the good example of, you really want to sway the students on your side? Help us out. Like a lot of the TAs were cool and we're like, yeah, we're canceling it. If you just do the bare minimum, like I can't say it confirmly, but I will be giving you an A. If the teacher doesn't do this, like you can reach me, I'll help you. And then the other parts of the TAs were like blocking parking lots. They were stopping students from parking. It's like, well, if I have a midterm to get to and you just fucked me, so now I can't get to my midterm, I fail, I'm not going to be on your side.
Ever.
Like, yeah. If you're blocking me from getting
impressions.
You remember the one of like the protesters, again, with like the ceasefire stuff when they were blocking the hospital?
Yeah.
Why are you blocking a hospital? If you want to cause a problem, go cause a problem that doesn't block a hospital.
Yeah, right.
I don't understand how I have to be the one to tell you that.
Yeah, nobody should have to tell you that.
You want to go protest outside Raytheon?
Yeah,
be my guest.
Go for it.
But protesting, I mean, that one broke my brain. I remember seeing that. I was like, "There's no way this is real." Like, a hospital?
Don't interfere with people's ability to save their own lives.
Yeah, I can't believe we have to be the ones to tell you that. A hospital of all places.
Yeah,
and it's embarrassing because it's like when we pander to those people, we're the ones who look weak. Yeah. And at one point or another, we just have to accept, we have to tell these people to sit down, shut the fuck up. Either we're going to give you what you want and you can accept it, you can help us. Otherwise, we got to do what we got to do. Yeah. Because the answer is the other guy is going to be a hell of a lot worse.
Yep.
And it's just, it hurts. And I think winning young male voters and swinging this perception of us being a weak party is like, we have to own this shit. We got to be strong. We got to be like, and not to say tough on crime, because it's like that has bad connotation, but we have to be firm. We can't just be like, oh, well, it's a mental health affliction, so we shouldn't put them in a rehab facility. Like, no, you need help and we're going to help you. Yes. Like, I don't care what the people with like multiple flags and a bunch of emojis in their bio on Twitter think. I'm getting the homeless people off the street and I'm helping them. I don't care if you don't like how I'm doing it. The answer is we're getting them the help we need. If that's your mother, your cousin, your aunt, your uncle, we're getting them the help they need and we're going to work on it. That's a promise. Like, same thing with housing. It's like, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh, well, I have this complicated 5-step plan and whatever. Like, no. I'm getting your rents down and I'm doing my best. And that's my promise to you.
Yeah.
I look, and again, I'm not a comms person. I don't know campaign as well as most people, but I think that's a much better plan than just here's my elaborate thing of protecting X right or whatever, or strengthening democracy of this abstract concept that we don't really know, like think about.
I mean, how do you win over voters, right? You tell them you're going to do something for them, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if the voting population that you're telling you're going to do something for them is less than 1% of the population, obviously that's not doing anything for getting yourself elected. You've got to know what your message is, right? And then you've got to simplify it to where it tells them in very uncertain but simple and concise terms what is going to happen when I do this thing. Like you said, we're going to lower your rent. Obviously you can say we're going to do it by building more houses because a lot of people are going to know that, but we're going to lower your rent. We're going to get your wages up. We are going to tax the wealthy so that your taxes don't go up. Make it simple, make it understandable, and everything else will fall in line from there. Coming across and being like, well, we want an opportunity economy. What the fuck is that?
What does that mean? Nobody knows.
What the fuck is that? Like, it's ridiculous. Nobody understands what that is. Nobody wants to know what that is. It sounds like means-tested liberal bullshit. And it's just, like you said, we're going to make sure your wages are better. We're going to raise minimum wage if that's what you want to do. Whatever it is, just simple terms, say it. Stop the bullshit.
Exactly. It's like that's how you reach people. Did you ever see that clip of Obama going back and forth about like his immigration thing?
Yes.
In that audience, yeah, it's that simple. If you want to come here legally, if you want to learn our language and you want to come here legally, you want to pay the fee and do the work, hell yeah. Because the answer is Americans work hard. We are strong. We are committed. Like you could say a lot about all the Europeans who make fun of us. Like, yeah, we work hard, we work smart, and people respond to that. If you're an immigrant who wants to come here and start a business and make a life, I think really if you frame it like that and you do all the right steps, I don't think majority of America is going to have a problem with that.
No, there are few people that work harder than immigrants who went through the legal process to become American citizens. There are few people who work hard. Now, there are Americans, like you said, work hard, and there's many people who work just as hard as them, but there are a few people that work harder, and they've earned it. And no, there's not this pull the ladder up behind you mentality with legal immigrants, but if they got here legally, the expectation is that anybody that comes after them should get here legally as well, and that's a fair assumption and a fair thought.
Absolutely, it's like own the capital, not the capital, the house on the hill, whatever's the thing on the hill. Own that shit. Be like, hell yeah, this is America. We're the land of opportunity. You want to come here and work hard, you earn it, and you do it the right way. Hell yes,
you will be rewarded.
Yeah, and it's the same thing for like regular. It's like, no, we're not crowding out jobs. We're providing jobs because that's what Americans do. Like I really think one of the only good things that came out of this like campaign cycle, and this is probably the biggest one, was Democrats owning patriotism, right? Yeah. Harris going up and going, hell yeah, we are the strongest military on planet Earth, and they do not fuck with us. We are the United States of America. I like that. Like, own that shit. If Republicans are too busy talking about how America sucks because we're woke and we're all fucking whatever, they're not patriots. I love this country. Do you love this country? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand how it's like the culture war thing of we apparently now Democrats are the patriots. We're the ones who love this country.
It's like reversed, right?
We'll take it.
I mean, for so long, it was Democrats hate America. Everything about America is bad. They want to fix everything because they don't believe in it. Now it's the reverse. All we've heard from Donald Trump is constant whining and make America great again because America's is fallen from grace. It's the worst country ever. And like you said, in this last election, the Democrats and Harris were, we love this fucking country. Like we want to make it better still, but it's the best country in the world, and that messaging does work. I mean, people love that, and we talk about immigration in particular, and like with declining birth rates, use that, right? We need immigrants. We need more consumers in the economy. Immigrants consume, they buy, they contribute to the economy, which creates more jobs, which creates higher wages, which does all this stuff that follows it. Like, we could talk about it all day, but, like we've kind of talked about the whole time, basically, we've got to figure out the messaging, right? We've got to figure out what we want to do on immigration. You talked about that Obama, I guess, was it a town hall where he's basically walking around answering? It was just perfect. And I remember at the time hearing like how left wing and how progressive and how radical he was. And then you listen to that and you're like, this is what Republicans say.
Yeah. this is reasonable.
Yeah. This is a normal immigration policy and a very good one. We've got to get back to that.
We do. And it's hard because we're at that weird moment where we just lost and like the new administration's taking power and we're still finding our voice. I'm confident that we will find it and we'll find a new leader to take up the mantle, and God only knows who it's going to be, because my gut tells me a lot of members of Congress and senators are really trying to fight to be that voice, and I think they're starting to see that. You have Ro Khanna going all these places, you have Chris Murphy, you have all these people that are really fighting to be that voice, and I think sooner or later it's going to start to emerge that there's this new set of voices, new generation of people that are ready to take over and change things. And all I have to say is I hope that they can actually find a concrete voice. I really hope that, recently elected DNC chair Ken Martin, obviously I hope he understands that building this environment with shows like us is a part of that thing. It's going to be hiring comms people who just go on fucking Instagram Reels and start talking about their member. We have to start building it. You build it now, not later. Build it now and get this thing rolling,
100%. I agree.
Yeah. Well, in that case, we're going to go ahead and end that here. This has been Brogressive Podcast, and we've hosted the Electorate. Ian, I want to thank you so much for joining us today. Is there anything you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, if you guys could just find me on all the social medias. You can find Electorate Pod on X. We're on YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, basically wherever you get your social media, and just give us a like, follow, comment, and let's try to build an ecosystem that can compete with the right wing.
Absolutely. Well, that's awesome. We'll go ahead and link obviously all his socials below. We'll keep you posted. And this has been the Brogressive Podcast. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next time.